Am I audible, students? Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
great. Right. Okay, so here we had seen the module 2, that is strategies for international growth. Okay, so we have already seen various strategies here. The first strategy was exporting, right? We have seen many examples here: Reliance Industries, Tata Steel, Sun Pharma Industries, Rajesh Exports, Bangalore, right? Arvind Mills, Tata, Vardhaman, Bajaj, and Hidden Gems Private Limited, Mumbai. These are the various examples of exports, right? Coming on to next, licensing. I hope I had stopped here licensing yesterday, or I had gone through franchising in the last class. I had explained franchising. Kedar, Kedar, please unmute yourself.
Yes, ma'am.
Kedar, you were present in the last class, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I had stopped at licensing, franchising, alliance.
Maybe, ma'am. I have no idea about that.
Great, very good. Okay, so let me explain it once again. Licensing strategy, my dear students. Here, firm, the licensor is one country giving other domestic or foreign firms licensee the right to use the patent or the trademark, the technology, production process, or product in return of payment of royalty or the fees. Okay, that is what we mean with licensing strategy. So, a great example here is US and Canadian book publishers allow translation because when they others pay the royalty there. Pepsi and Coca-Cola with bottling companies and distributors have given the rights to the bottling companies and distributors to produce on their behalf, distribute the products on their behalf, and they pay the fees or royalty to the company. Okay, then basically for Coca-Cola, licensing started for brand protection. They went in for brand protection because there was a lot of copy which was being done, okay, on different products, taking the Coca-Cola company name. So Coca-Cola company licensed itself, and then they went in for uh, licensing strategy, and then they brought in the branded products into the category. And now it's a great example for large leveraging a common brand affinity and nostalgia. John degree again is one of the common example, my dear students, wherein you need to take into consideration how company was able to leverage its dealers network. Okay, so basically Harley Davidson also, what they do is they just have the dealership wherein the bikes were being sold with the dealers, right? And the dealers will be paying the fees amount to them. Okay, so that's what basically the licensing strategy looks into. Now, moving down to franchising and licensing, the difference. So, both franchising is governed by security laws, wherein licensing is governed by contract law. Franchising registration is very much required. Licensing, there is no registration required. Only you can get into contract with the licensee. Then territorial rights offered to franchisee, whereas it is not offered to the licensee. Support and training, it is provided by franchisor and not provided by licensee. Royalty payment, both have to pay the royalty. Then use of trademark and logo and trademark can be retained by the franchisor and used by the franchisee. So nothing can be changed by the franchisee. Only the franchisor can do any changes. But when it comes to licensing, can be licensed. Okay. Examples of franchising: McDonald's, Subway, 7-Eleven, Dunkin' Donuts. Okay. Example of licensing, it is nothing but Microsoft Office. Then when it comes to control, franchising exercises control over franchisor. Okay, so franchisor will be having the entire control over the franchisee. But when it comes to licensing, licensor doesn't have any control over the licensee. Okay, many a times we see many of the copyrights are being taken from Microsoft Office, and you know, you have the Microsoft Office which is being set up in the laptop, which is not very official. Okay, many a times it can be copied. So that control is not there when it comes to licensing. Okay, then strategies of international growth, again franchising strategy. A lot of examples are McDonald's, Holiday Inn, right? Lian's Real Estate, Dixit Chickens, Eurocred International Limited, which is very much well settled in India. That is one of the example of franchising. Then Pizza Corner, Kazaria Apparels, Gitanjali Jewelries, BJ Cleaning Systems. All these are examples of franchisee. Franchising is nothing but where a parent organization, that is franchisor, granting other companies or individuals, that is franchisee, the right to use its trademark and name and produce and sell its goods and services. Now, moving on to alliance strategy, it is nothing but agreeing with other companies to pool physical, financial, and human resources to achieve common goals. So here, what you're going to do is you're going to pool the other companies to utilize the resources of the other companies. And what type of resources? It is a physical resources, financial resources, human resources. Okay. So Ford and Adibio again is one of the example of this particular alliance strategy, wherein they go in for alliance for premium leather seats and other luxury features throughout in the vehicle. They just order it from the companies. Now Spotify and Uber, again they are example of alliance. Google and Luxottica, again they are example of alliance. HP, Disney, Starbucks, Barnes and Noble, all these are examples of alliance. Okay, so when it comes to Disney, they get into alliance with many colleges, okay, wherein they get the designs which are being put forth by the students, right? And reason for alliance, basically it sharing of the cost, okay, lowering the cost of high risk technology. Then afterwards, desire to learn to other firms technology and advantage and benchmark it. Then desire to participate in evolution of competitive activities, that means to become competitive throughout the globe. Then you have multi-domestic strategy, wherein you just go in for adjusting the products, the services, and practices to individual countries or regions. Okay, so here you just adjust the products, you just adjust the services and practices according to the needs and customers of domestic countries where you are going to sell the product. So Frito-Lay's, Campbell Food. Okay, one of the great example again, McDonald's. Okay, McDonald's in 1955 they opened its first restaurant in Des Plaines, Illinois, today 2008 or 2021. If you could see, they are operating with more than 50,000 restaurants. Okay, and more than in lot many companies, sorry, in lot many countries on the 6 continents, and employing more than 1.5 million people all over the world. In 2008, it was 1.5 million. Now it's at almost double. So we consider McDonald's a multi-domestic company because it adjusts its culture and the taste of the food according to the host countries. Okay. Then you have global strategy, that is stressing worldwide consistency, standardization, low relativity. Okay. So here globally, if you could see, the product is standardized, is consistent. There is no change in the product. Okay. So best example for global strategy is Google. Okay, it is very consistent all over the world. Okay, wherever you go and search Google in any country, you will get the same page. Okay, so that's what we say, it is a global strategy. So need for multinational global strategy, basically to become a significant competitor. Yeah,
Are you not sharing the screen?
I am.
Present it.
Right. Just a minute. I forgot. Is it visible, students, now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So here need for multinational global strategy, basically to become a significant competitor, right? So new goods and services must be developed for the whole world, right? And profit targets need to be based on product lines. Decision need to be based on global consideration. Narrow-minded attitude need to be overcome. The foreign managers need to be promoted to the senior rank at corporate head. headquarters. So this is the need for multinational global strategy. So global integration basically means centralized control over key resources and operations that are strategic in value chain. So global integration, many companies choose to expand internationally while maintaining close control over the value chain. So the many companies want to expand internationally, but they want to maintain a close control over the value chain. That is the production, quality, R&D, logistics, marketing, everything. Right? They want to have a close control of that, and also the support activities such as HR, procurement, okay, training and development, all. So these are the source of value added. Okay, and the link between these elements. So decisions are made from global perspective. In the extreme, the firm operates as if the world were a single market. So that is what we say global integration. Or you are going to integrate all the value chain activities, whatever are there. Okay, you are going to integrate the HR and procurement, that is support activities, whatever are there. You are going to see the globe as the single market, and you are going to operate accordingly. That is what we say about global integration. Now, coming on to next point in module 2, that is exploiting global integration. Okay, so we have seen already what is global integration. Okay, in exploiting global integration, first point is logic of global integration. So why global integration has been taken into consideration? What is the logic behind this? First is for the economies of scale. Okay, so here company can lower its unit cost by centralizing critical value chain activities. So what it does is it take control over the entire value chain activities. Okay, and it is being operated by one particular country only. So it lowers its unit cost. Okay, such as manufacturing or logistics, whatever it is. So this may involve having small number of large facilities to make products for export, or creating a network of specialized and focused operation spread around the world that are tightly controlled by the central hub. So here, either you manufacture your products in one particular country and have a close watch on that, or you just put forth the production part of the production to other countries and then have a close watch on that and have total control on that, so that nothing goes here and there, and then you take entire control and then you get the productions on time. Okay, with the lower cost. You're going to use the competence of the people across the globe. You're going to utilize the competencies of the countries across the globe. That's what we say economies of scale. Then you have second logic in global integration, that is value chain linkages. So sometimes competitive advantage comes from tight linkaging between value chain activities. Okay, so here when you have a tight linkage, when you are totally connected, integrated, R&D, manufacturing, marketing activities, HR activities, everything is integrated with each other. Okay, so here when you have close integration, you can have a better uh, production, and you can have a better competitive advantage, better communication between each other, and you can have a better competitive advantage. For example, Silicon Valley in the internet equipment business. Okay, so they are very closely connected with each other when it comes to internet equipment business. Okay, or between logistics and manufacturing. Okay, so here tight integration allows the firm to stay ahead of technological and competitive changes. Okay, that's what is the logic of global integration. Apart from that, serving global customers. Okay, so this is one of the major logic of global integration. So here you can serve the global customers, integrate and operate on a global basis, right? So their supplies may be forced to adapt to a similar structure. Subsidiaries do not have their own standalone customers. They don't have their own standalone customers. Prices, quality standards, delivery terms are determined globally. So they just go into the global terms. Just identify the cultures of the various countries. They identify the customers of various countries, price discrimination, how it can be done, quality standards, how it can be improved. Okay, and then delivery terms and all those things, everything changes according to the global customers. So this is how they serve the global customers. Then you have next one, global branding, that is consumer product companies such as Coca-Cola, Gillette promote a unified brand image around the world. So around the world, Wherever you go, this particular product is being called as Coca-Cola only. Wherever you go, one particular product is called as Gillette only. There is no change of name. So Coke basically standardizes both its formula and advertising themes. So what they do is, according to the country language, according to the country symbols, according to the country culture, according to the country people, they just standardize the advertisements themes. Okay, just standardize the taglines and all those things, and then they put forth the advertisement into that particular country. You may not find the same advertisement across the globe. Everywhere in every country, there is different advertisement based on their own themes of that particular country, and that's the major reason for Coke to be a critical success factor when it comes to global branding. Okay, so that's what we say: gaining efficiency in utilization of marketing tools such as advertising and merchandising. Okay, then you have the next logic of global integration, that is leveraging capabilities. Okay, so some companies basically expand globally by transferring capabilities developed in home country. So what they do is they expand globally and they transfer the capabilities which are there in home country. They just disperse the people from home country to various other countries. Okay, and then they go in for international expansion. Okay, they try to identify the competent people across the globe, and then try to catch hold of them, set up the business, and then look in for integrating that particular business. So here, the international expansion of both IKEA and Walmart depends on supply chain management skills that allow these companies to pursue their traditional low price strategy around the world. So Walmart is basically known for low price strategy and availability, whereas IKEA is the same, and known for low price strategy, and that's what they have leveraged the capabilities of the supply chain management, identified the cost minimization in supply chain management, and with that they have reduced the cost, and that's what has brought in the success factor for IKEA and Walmart, right? And then you have world class standardization, that is one of the logic of global integration. So key processes are standardized, okay, and centrally controlled so as to maintain competitive advantage. So whatever key processes are there, like recruitment, or it may be marketing activities, sales activities, or maybe any other activities which are internal within the organization, it is standardized throughout the world. Wherever you go, that company particular process is standardized, it is same and centrally controlled so as to maintain a competitive advantage. So pharmaceutical giant like Merck manufactures locally to meet government requirements. Okay, then its manufacturing processes are complex. However, these are standardized in order to maintain high quality. So whatever manufacturing process is there, it is being standardized to maintain high quality. Okay, then you have the next one, that is competitive platform. That is again one of the logic of global integration. So tight control of local subsidiaries by central headquarters may allow rapid response to competitive conditions and redeployment of resources so as to facilitate expansion worldwide. So here, when it comes to mm, competitive platform, you have a platform set which is very competitive. You have a tight control of local subsidiaries. What you have, you understand is your the subsidiaries of your product, whoever are there, you have a tight control over them by central headquarters, and may allow rapid response. Okay, you just allow rapid response to the competitive condition. Any change in the competition, immediately you will rapidly respond to that particular thing and redeploy the resources accordingly. For example, tightly centralized Japanese multinationals penetrated new markets in the past through price subsidization funded by profitable operations elsewhere. The Japanese products and the Chinese products, basically they penetrated the entire world based on their low price system, okay, or price subsidization. That's what basically is creating a competitive platform. Then you have the next logic of global integration, that is information advantage. Okay, so prime examples of mega national firms are Japanese trading companies, that is Sogo Sosha, are located in every corner of the world. So through network of local offices staffed primarily by Japanese expatriates, these optimize global business opportunities by tapping into price and delivery information about thousands of products. So what they do is they tap the pricing and delivery information about thousands of products. Then they use that particular information for their own advantage. So that's what Japanese trading companies, that is Sogo Sosha, does it. Okay, and then you have a locally responsive, that is differentiation. Only one way to ensure that people practice and invest are optimizing for organizational success is to focus on the area of highest gain while maintaining the other elements of your HR functions at an appropriate level. So in other words, keep Mickey engaged but target the sweepers. So here you have to be locally responsible, you have to be different. Okay, you have to ensure that people practices and investments are optimized for the organizational success. Then you have mastering expatriation. That is one more term in module 2. Mastering expatriation, my dear students, when it comes to international HR professionals, has historically been domain of relocation specialists. So you have certain relocation specialists who are being employed in the organization, and certain consultants who are being employed. Okay, basically to look after the compensation, benefit, taxation, and all those things. And also an expert on taxation is being employed in an organization to take care of the expatriates. Okay, so here when you want your expatriate to be very successful, you need to have these three people in your organization. One is relocation specialist, who helps out the expatriate into relocating, okay, into domestic arrangements of that particular employee there in the other country. Then consultants in compensation and benefits, you have to have the consultants who help down the expatriate in understanding the compensation and benefit system and identify the right compensation for that particular expatriate. And also experts into international taxation. Okay, so that's what we could say into mastering expatriation. So in the academic literature, the field of international human resource management is also to a large extent synonymous with studies on expatriation. So today, emphasis on international HR basically has changed dramatically. So nevertheless, the effective management of expatriation or broadly of international transfers remain one of the foundation of implementation of global strategies. So if you want your business to grow global, if you want to be a global success, then you need to have right measures being taken when it comes to international human resource management. Okay, so the purpose in mastering expatriation, first you need to identify the purpose of expatriation, why an employee is being sent from one country to another country. Then beyond traditional expatriate model, you need to go beyond the traditional expatriate model, identify the tensions in the expatriate cycle, what happens. Then home and host country tensions, global and local tensions, short-term and long-term tensions, tensions between cost and investment, demand and supply tensions. All these are various things we need to look into. So first, we'll identify what is beyond the traditional expatriate model. So basically, when it comes to changing demographics of expatriate population, expatriates were earlier selected from home country alone. Okay, expatriate population was homogeneous, right? So only from the parent country the expatriates were being sent. They were not being taken from any other country. Okay, so it was homogeneous. So expatriate assignments were basically temporary, not for a longer time or longer period of time. The objectives of assignment was to control or transfer knowledge. Okay, control the home country nationals, control the home country process, or basically to transfer the knowledge from the parent country to the home country nationals. So that is what was the main motto of transferring the expatriate from one country to another country. Again, basically women expatriates, right, beyond the traditional expatriate model. So women expatriates newly came up, younger expatriates, third country nationals were added on when it comes to expatriation. So basically when it started, with changing demographic, expatriate population was more of parent country, and the main objective was only to control the home country operations, home country nationals, and to transfer knowledge from parent country nationals to home country nationals, parent country nationals to host country nationals. Now it is beyond the traditional expatriate model. Now more of engagement of women employees or women into expatriations, right? More of younger generation into expatriations, and third country nationals, people from other countries apart from home and host countries. And then coming on to next, alternative expatriates is nothing but if you do not want to send expatriates, or if you do not want to focus too much on expatriates, again global integration without expatriation. You just go for globally integrating the processes without any expatriation. Then virtual expatriation, that means a person need not go from one place or one country to another country. He can sit in this country through the technology. He can communicate to the people from the other country. And impatriation, all these are various alternatives which are being found out for expatriations. Okay. Then purpose of expatriate. Okay, so when it comes to purpose of expatriate, my dear students, the main thing is assignment and duration, that is assignment and purpose. So short duration, and the purpose is demand driven to solve the problem. If an employee is being sent from one country to another country, they are being called as an expatriate or an international assignee. So if they are being sent for a shorter period of time, then the purpose of that expatriate is to solve the problem solving. Okay, and if they are being sent for a shorter period of time, okay, for learning, that is for career enhancement, fine, then for a longer period of time, long assignment or long duration. Okay, when it comes to demand driven, one is corporate agency. So here, controlling and transferring the knowledge from the parent country nationals to the host country nationals, so it is a longer duration. So when it comes to again longer duration, learning driven, competency development, developing the competency, identifying the competence from the other countries and learning that technology and learning that competence skills, learning that particular knowledge and then implementing it into the parent country national. That is the purpose of expatriation. Now coming on to limits of global integration. So first limit is limits on ability to respond to local needs and demands. Now, when we speak about global integration, a lot of limits wherein you will not be able to respond to local needs and demands. Then increased demand for coordination. Too much of increased demand will be there for coordination because you are integrating with people from various countries. So you need to coordinate well. So increased demand for coordination will be there. Then employee perception about expatriates. Again, a lot of perceptions about expatriates, how well they communicate with the other people from the other country, what they feel about them, how well they can communicate, how are the feelings with that particular person from the other country, right? How well you can perceive that particular person. Okay, those all again are certain limits. Then becoming locally responsible. All these are various limits of global integration. Okay. So here becoming locally responsive, the roots of responsiveness. So first thing is communication and transport issues. Now when it comes to becoming locally responsive, okay, so here first thing which is being identified here is communication and transport issues. Okay, a lot of trade barriers which will be there if you want to import and export from products from one country to another country. Okay, those trade barriers are basically the main root cause for becoming locally responsive. Okay, then the business advantage of responsiveness. Okay, adjusting to the local taste, wider appeal. Okay, you have to go domestic as well as international. Then overcome liability of foreignness. Okay, competitiveness, credibility. All these are various business advantages when you become locally responsive. You will be adjusting to the local taste. Your company will be having a wider appeal. Okay, then you can overcome the liabilities of foreigners. Okay, then afterwards competitiveness. You become very competitive, not only international but also local, and you have the credibility. Okay, so localization in people management. HR is more sensitive to local context, that is cultural issues and national regulations. So understanding diversity. So here cultural differences between parent company and local subsidiary, host environment, company's way of networking. As I told in the start of the class, the culture of various countries differ from one country to another country. So here you need to identify the cultural differences between parent company and the local subsidiaries. Okay, as well as the host environment and company's way of networking. How well you network, taking these cultural differences into consideration. Then moving on to responding to diversity. Okay, so be guided with diversity, respect the local diversity, entry mode, local adoption HR practices. When you are opening a business in one particular country, you need to you need to respect the local diversity. You need to understand the entry mode into that particular country. Then you need to also have a local adaptation, that is HR practices, whatever you are putting forth should be locally responsive. That means you need to adapt to the local demands and requirements. Okay. And then capitalization on diversity. For example, again, when it comes to HR practices, local adoption, you speak about European unions. Unions are very strong in Europe, right? And you need to adjust to their terms and conditions, whatever is there, right? Then capitalize on diversity, that is building cultural synergy, develop new solutions that respect each culture. Then moving jobs to people, challenges of localization. How it is very challenging when it comes to localization, understanding the local needs, and meeting the demands of local people, right? And then moving jobs to the people. Okay, all these are various challenges which are being put forth. Then finding and developing local talent, challenges of localization. Okay, what are the different challenges when you want to go for localization? One is finding and developing local talent. Certain times you have scarcity of talent, and then labor market access, you will not be able to identify the right source of identify the right source to get the right labor. Then you may have scarcity of talent. Basically, when you speak about when you speak about African countries, they have a scarcity of talent, and that's the reason many of the Indians are working in South Africa as well as North Africa, right? And that's what the labor market access. Again, you have n number of labors available in India, and that's the reason many of the companies are pouring in, because you have a lower cost of labor which is there in India. And retaining local talent. Okay, that is one of the challenge of localization. So here expatriated are responsible for localization. So here expatriates who are being sent to the host countries, they should see to it that they just retain the local talent which is being recruited, and recruit the right talent, select the right person, set the right objectives to them, motivate them. Okay, motivate the localization, motivate more and more people flowing into the company. Then develop local staff, identify the local staff, right, competent local staff, develop them, motivate them. Okay, train them into the culture of the organization. And then go in for HR marketing and recruitment. Okay, develop a brand image of that particular company into the mind of the locals, and train and develop the employees to follow the culture of the organization, and also train others who come into the company to follow the culture of the organization. That is what we say retaining local talent. Then moving on to international human resource management and international alliances. Okay, so alliances, as we have seen, cooperative strategy in which firms combine resources and capabilities to create a competitive advantage. So international alliances, the need for international alliances is tools of international growth. So what you're going to do is, when you're going to align with different companies, okay, for the resources, you're just growing your industry. Okay, so it is a tool for international growth, right? And then cut cost of entry. Okay, so here when you are aligning your particular when you are aligning the resources from various companies, the cost is being cut down. You are going to identify the low cost from where you are going to get. For example, in India, human resource is available at a very lower cost, and that is what is being utilized by IT BPOs and ITES companies, right? And leveraging opportunities, identifying the opportunities, or identifying the right talent, identifying the innovative techniques, technologies, and all those things from various companies and to various countries, and using that particular opportunities. And then, as I said, economies of scale, which I've already explained. Right? Types of alliances, basically, it may be functional alliance or number of partners, contractual agreements, or strategic framework. So, functional alliance is nothing but your R&D will be from some particular country, manufacturing unit will be from some particular country, marketing and distribution will be from some particular country, and all those things. You're going to, align the various functions. Okay, and then you have the number of partners, increasing the number of partners. Okay, aligned partners. Okay, then contractual agreements, you will be having contractual agreements with various companies into various sectors and all those things. Then strategic framework. Okay, you have a very nice strategy wherein you align your various industries, and then put forth the growth for your business. Okay, Then coming down to IHRM and international joint ventures. Okay. Joint venture occurs basically when two businesses based in two or more countries form a partnership. So two businesses from two or more countries, when they form a partnership, it becomes a joint venture. So company that wants to explore international trade without taking on full responsibility of cross-border business transactions has the option of forming a joint venture with a foreign partner. So here you can go in a joint venture JV with a foreign partner when you do not want to take full responsibility of cross-border business transactions. Okay, so that's what we say joint ventures. So types of joint ventures which are there in international human resource management. One is corporate joint venture, or it is also being called as equity joint venture. Okay, so it is a form of collaboration that sets up a new entity or a new corporation. Okay, so this new element is under a high rigidity and complexity due to different legal implications of each country. So non-corporate joint ventures, it is contractual agreement that does not generate a new entity. So here corporate joint venture and non-corporate joint venture. Corporate joint venture creates a new identity and you will be implied by the legal laws of that particular country. Non-corporate joint venture, wherein it is just a contractual agreement between one country and the other country business, and it doesn't generate a new entity. Okay, so all joint venture members assume the loss in an agreed proportion. They assume the loss in agreed proportion, and the obligations are limited to the obligation of a own joint venture. Okay, so that's what we speak about the corporate joint venture. Right, joint venture facilities basically to get over commercial frontiers, building new market needs into different cultures, right? Then creating new product line, that is one of the major facility of joint venture. Then improving the quality of the product, isolate each stakeholders bookkeeping. Okay, getting access to new capital and foreign funding opportunities, that is key for joint ventures. Getting access to new capital and foreign funding opportunities, that's the reason many of the companies go for joint ventures. Then shorten production time. Okay, so then cut the cost and minimize investment risk and higher specialization. These are various advantages of various facilities when it comes to joint ventures. Okay, so till here, is it being understood, my dear students? Any doubts? Any doubts, students? Yashaswini?
Yes,
Yashaswini?
ma'am.
Okay, is it being understood?
Yes, ma'am. I'm following it.
You're following. Very nice. What about Ashwini? Ashwini, you're following? Ashwini?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Sandra? Sandra, please unmute yourself.
Yes, ma'am.
Yasin?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. So, if you're not understanding anything, please, my dear students, WhatsApp me to my mobile number. At the nth moment, don't come and tell me I have not followed this. Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Right. So probably module 1 notes, it was being late for me to send. Today I will be sending module 1 notes. And then once I complete module 2, I will be sending module 2 notes also. Please try to read module 1. Don't sit at the nth moment. And if you have any confusion in understanding any part of module 1, please reply me back on my WhatsApp number. I'll clarify it when I take the next class. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Right. Thank you very much, students.
Thank you, ma'am.